kind of switch gears here now and get into today's session. And we're going to be talking about how to develop a sustainable employee appreciation strategy. And today's session is brought to you by Bucket List, the #1 employee rewards and recognition program, and also brought to you by Tango Card, the leading incentive delivery technology. For those of you who attended these sessions previously, you know we're on a mission to help people leaders build the best cultures possible. And as always, it's our intention for you to have sort of 1 to 3 takeaways, some kind of cool tactics and tips that you can ideally implement into your organization. And I think today's session will certainly provide that. It's going to be an interactive session, so if a question pops up, please feel free to throw that into the chat window. And additionally, we're gonna tackle all those questions at the end of today's session. Oh, and finally, I'm also going to ask you at the end of today's session, what was your favorite takeaway? So please keep that in mind as we go through. My name is Jason Lindstrom. I'm the CEO over at Bucket List Rewards. I have a bit of expertise in the rewards and recognition space. I've worked with everything from startups to Fortune 100s across all industries, everything from Royal Bank of Canada, one of the largest banks in the world, to the NFL, to all sorts of other cool organizations. But more importantly, I'm happy to introduce Mary Shelley, the Chief People Officer over at Tango Cards. Tango Cards is a B2B company that makes rewards easy to send and awesome to receive. We're a partner of theirs, and indeed, they're just an awesome company in general. Mary is passionate about DEI and creating strong company cultures in today's modern distributed workforce. And during your tenure in the HR space, Mary's held significant leadership roles at organizations like SeekNow, EBTH, Cafe Press, and Infusionsoft. And in my conversations with Mary today, she's just been a total pleasure to work with. And I'm really excited for her to share her knowledge with everybody here today. So Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me.
And for an agenda, we're going to talk about why sustainability is important. We're going to talk about what makes a good employee appreciation strategy, some things you should avoid, 5 strategies, and 5 strategies to implement a great program. And with that, I might start off with just a quick poll question, and then we're going to get into giving Mary a chance to share some of her expertise. So for my first poll question, who here has launched a recognition program and had it fizzle? So give me a second here. Let me pop this up, launch this for everybody. So the question again, and you should see this on screen now. Who has launched a recognition program that's fizzled? Oh, so far, 93% of you have gone through this experience. So I think this is a very timely question, and Mary, what a great way to tee up your session. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. The numbers crept down a bit, and poll. I'll share the results with everybody on the call just so you can get a sense. So around 87% of you say you've launched a program and had it fizzle, and about a little over 10% of you have launched a successful program. But awesome. Mary, over to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on why sustainability is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing in my head when I saw that 87% has had at least one program around employee appreciation fizzle. I know that's definitely happened to me throughout my career, which is why sustainability and this topic is so important to me. I can give a quick story. So very early on in my career, I had a super eager CEO who was very much in tune to sort of what was new, what was hot. And he overheard this particular idea and he was like, hey, Mary, I have this great idea for employee appreciation. And of course, me wanting to prove myself, I was like, yes, let's do it. Rolled out the program. Long story short, it completely fizzled. It was way too complicated and it wasn't sustainable. And in the end, I had employees afterwards tell me, yes, the CEO is very much like this. He's very much shiny object. And we have a lot of programs that are flavor of the month. And so that was a great lesson learned for me on how to make sure that any program, but especially employee recognition, employee appreciation, and engagement are sustainable.
Awesome. And if I may, I know a lot of CEOs, and I certainly love them. They're amazing people, but I don't think you're alone in having CEOs who get caught up in something compelling in the idea of the shiny flavor of the month. So what a share. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. And I think the first question being all around sustainability and why it's key. I'd love to hear your insights and thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's on the screen, and but it really does represent the culture. And so for what I mean by that is if you take the time and you're intentional about your program elements, then you're reinforcing the type of culture that you want to have. And then if you do that really well, because people are happy, engaged, and feel like the work that they do is meaningful and recognized, their productivity is obviously going to raise. It amplifies transparency because both leaders and employees know the exact behaviors that we want reinforced, instead of sort of this guessing game of like, I don't know how to be more productive or what I need to do to be promoted or rewarded. And then if you have the transparency and the culture is reinforced, it's going to overall increase your satisfaction that you have along your employee journey, which is then also going to improve retention. And especially right now, when we have the great retention or the great resignation, we all want to do everything we can to improve retention as much as possible.
Yeah, amazing. And I know too, sometimes management teams, they love the vision of a recognition program. They like it. But I often hear like, we need to know kind of the ROI of this program, and knowing that it can impact retention makes it a bit more of a no-brainer to implement something like this. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So next up, what makes a good employee appreciation strategy from your point of view?
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so I do think there's some elements that we should all consider when coming up with a good appreciation strategy. We already talked a little bit about scalability, right? And what I mean about that, in addition to the story that I shared, was how can it grow along with our business? So especially for those of us that are in startups or sort of this mid-tier high growth companies, you need to think about things like automation, multiple locations, ways that you can sustain that program as you grow as a business. And what goes along with that is, do you have the infrastructure to support it? So it's really easy to say when you're 50 people all in one building, it's easy to sort of hand out physical things. But once you go, more than one state or you go global, then how are you going to leverage technology and other means to make sure it's scalable? Secondly, accessibility, right? So two great questions you can ask yourself as you develop these programs are, can all levels of employees and people in all locations both give recognition and receive it? Because the last thing that you want to do is create a really great recognition program, let's say in the States, but then your folks in Singapore or France, right, don't get to participate at the same level. Is it flexible? And so I really encourage that when you look at the specific elements of your program, can those elements evolve as your business goals evolve? So sometimes I've seen where employee appreciation programs are so married to like the specific goals of, let's say, 2021, that when your goals change in 2024, then you have to change your entire employee recognition program, and that's not really great either. And then how can you recognize both individuals and team recognition? And I think that's another great element to consider. Is it meaningful? So what are we rewarding? And this is one of my favorite questions to ask leaders as you get buy-in for your employee appreciation strategies. Sometimes when we think about a certain reward, we're actually recognizing a behavior that we don't want. So let me give an example of that. So I was at one company where we were in a really high growth mode, and we were rewarding people working really late hours and on the weekends. It's actually against our values of sort of work-life harmony. And so we were actually reinforcing something we didn't want. And so how do you reinforce people being productive but also not having to sort of be that superhero and work all those hours to do that. And then also, do the employees value the recognition, right? If it's not meaningful to them, then it's not going to be reinforcing, and we're not going to get that engagement and retention. And finally, timely. So are we capturing the moments that matter, right? If you wait and have something where you only reward and recognize people on a quarterly basis, what happens in that first 2 months of the quarter, right? You're really missing those opportunities just to recognize people and tell them that you really appreciate what they're doing. And also at the same time, if you don't want to do it quarterly, how do you avoid making it feeling overscheduled? Like, okay, we all put on our calendars that this is the time to recognize employees, right? Because that's not sustainable either.
Yeah, it was funny. I literally just got off the phone with somebody who said they had a recognition program that runs all year. But what happens is, as the year winds up, all the managers try to rapidly get rid of, their points. And anyways, they've run into the exact problem you just described here. So
absolutely.
Awesome backgrounder and context. So up next, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what should you avoid when creating an employee appreciation strategy.
Yeah, this is huge for me. So along with giving everyone tips, I think it's always really great to point out the things to watch out for. So the first one is checking the box. And I know that especially those of us that might be in HR department of one, or where you're in a high growth organization, you have a lot of things on your plate, that just rolling out a employee recognition program is like, great, I got it. And we check that box. But again, if you want it to be sustainable and meaningful, I really caution you just to take that little bit of extra time and intentionally build a program that's going to be sustainable. Overcomplicating. And so I have a story on this, Jason. So at a different company, I had a very ambitious HR coordinator who loved employee engagement. And she came to me and she said, I had this really great idea for this employee appreciation strategy. And I was like, great, put a proposal together. I'd love to hear your ideas. She spent probably about 2 weeks putting this proposal together. And when I saw it, it had multi-tiers, it had all these ways of getting points, it had all of these approval levels. And I looked at it and I was like, there's no way this is going to be sustainable. I love your ideas, but is there a way to tease them out and simplify them? Because if I, as a person in employee engagement, think it's really complicated, you know that employees and leaders are going to feel the same way. Being one-dimensional. And so again, this goes back to if we think about DEI, different employees find different things important and meaningful. And so if you only focus on one element in your employee appreciation programs, you're going to miss out on really resonating with all types of employees at all different levels. So again, just caution against that. Rewarding the wrong behavior. Again, I gave that example earlier of working extra hours, and that really went against our values and our culture. And so make sure that you really take a step back and understand what you're actually recognizing. And then finally, overcompensating. And so I think we've all been in some of those organizations where, for whatever reason, I've been in a couple of turnaround situations where it's really stressful and the business is going under. And so you create this really amazing employee appreciation strategy and attempt to overcompensate for the decline in the business. And employees can see right through that. So what I also encourage is, while absolutely you want to have a reward appreciation recognition program for your employees, also make sure that you're taking care of sort of Maslow's hierarchy first, and that you're checking on their mental welfare and what's going on in the business, instead of just trying to, sort of supplement what's going on in the business with a program.
Awesome tips. I love it. This is great. And so that kind of leads logically to the next question here, which is what are 5 steps or strategies companies can follow to make all of this happen? How do we release the genie from the bottle here?
Right, absolutely. And so the first thing really to do is start small. Now, while I said avoid being one-dimensional, you still can recognize more than one thing, but keeping your initial program small. if you get some of those early wins, then it's easier to get buy-in from both employees on leaders on expanding the program over time. I also really encourage balancing between a formal recognition elements and informal elements. We've all seen the research on how peer-to-peer recognition is super meaningful for employees. So make sure to bake that in. Again, diversify, consider what is meaningful to different employees. Build anticipation. So there's also this really fascinating research out there that talks about the anticipation of I might get this reward is actually more meaningful than the reward itself. And so how can you sort of do that with your programs where, again, it's not that overscheduled and like, oh, I know this person in sales is going to get it because we only recognize people in sales on a quarterly basis. And then again, finally, automation is key. That is really what's going to make it easier for you and all of us in HR and the people departments, but then also to help that scalability.
That's such fantastic tips. And one mini anecdote from my side, that building of anticipation, it resonates with me so much. I have a vacation coming up with my family. I haven't taken one in a little while. And my 6-year-old daughter asks she's still trying to figure out times and days. And she's like, Dada, like how many days till the vacation? Like how much longer? And the buildup and the excitement in our family is like through the roof now. And I'm sure the event itself will be great, but yeah, anticipation is such an amazing emotion. Awesome. So next up, what can companies start doing today? Which is such a good question. Like, you're sharing so much good information. There's so many good ideas here, but where do we begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great question, Jason. First of all, I mean, sort of the obvious place to start is either to start somewhere and begin to design your program, or review what you have in place today and find those places based on some of those tips we've given and some of those things to avoid, and update your current strategy. I definitely recommend for any new programs. Again, what sometimes we think is really cool may not actually resonate with employees. And if you want this to be sustainable and meaningful, it's always a really great idea to pilot. Obviously, after you get a chance to pilot, you want to launch it. I also recommend doing some workshops, virtual works on actually training on why we're rolling out this program, how this is going to improve engagement and retention, and what you expect from both employees and leaders in their participation in the program. That's going to go a long way, again, for sort of the longevity of that program. Along with that is coaching. So how do we as leaders, not only the HR or people department, but all of us as leaders, model, report, and give others feedback on how well they're sort of processing the employee engagement and employee appreciation? And then finally, review, right? If we're going to go to all this effort to create this really cool program and pilot and coach others, let's also gather that feedback. Because even the best programs can have some just tiny minor tweaks that we might want to make, again, to keep it meaningful to employees.
Excellent. Awesome content. And just a quick note, I see some questions flowing in the chat windows. Please feel free to keep asking those. So thank you, Stephanie and Nisha. We're going to be tackling questions at the end, but yeah, just keep them coming on in. Use the chat window or Q&A. Wonderful. So up next, what can companies start doing this month?
Yeah, I really like giving what can you sort of start doing today, what can you do this month, and then what can you do ongoing, creating routines. So for me, there is a difference between creating a routine and being overscheduled. But again, if we have a lot going on, and especially with COVID going on for over 2.5 years now, it's really sort of easy to feel like, oh, this is one more thing on our plate. But if sort of you bake it in to your regular routine, it helps sustain employee appreciation programs. Again, do pulse surveys, do focus groups, ask employees what makes you feel valued. And again, sort of get all of that information because that's really great input on what you can design. And then again, review any current existing plans and identify those enhancement opportunities to make your program even better.
And then wonderful. And then one more kind of time related questions. What can companies, I guess, do over a longer overarching period of time?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, when you ask employees up front, and then you continue to run your programs, make sure that you built in periodic check-ins with employees to make sure we're still optimizing the programs. Um, there are a lot of products out there where you can do those check-ins, and I highly recommend that you leverage those. Also, obtain the budget. I think this is really important for what you can do to sustain programs over time. Again, if you start small and you get a little budget and then you're able to prove some of that ROI with retention and engagement scores, then bake that into your next budget cycle and try to get a little bit more budget, and then understand what your guardrails are. Like, hey, if we happen to go a little bit over, what does this mean? Because again, you don't want to sacrifice the quality and the import to the employees by not following some unwritten rule that you're unaware of. And then make sure that you do that ongoing assessment. So we're going to ask our employees, we're going to review the budget, but then continue to review existing programs to see if they're still in alignment with what's going on in your business right now.
Excellent. And then are rewards important for a sustainable appreciation plan?
I mean, I'm going to laugh, right? Because I'm at Tango Card and I wouldn't be here. And definitely in a chief people officer role if I didn't think so, but 100% rewards matter, right? There are those tangible things that employees can see, feel, touch to make sure that they know that we recognize and reward them for what they're doing. And again, the more engaging, meaningful, sustainable over time, then the more likely it's going to reap those rewards from a business perspective that we're talking about. So 100%.
Awesome. Outstanding. Wonderful. So Mary, we covered a lot of ground. Some of the things we discussed today was the fundamentals of building a good recognition program, how to build a sustainable program. You shared 5 strategies to building a great program. A question for the attendees today, and if you could just type this into the chat window, what did you find most valuable? What was really interesting to you? And so I'll give the team here, our audience, a second to type. Oh, looks like there's already more questions coming through. Teresa said, great info that I'd like to share with my leadership team. Thank you, Teresa. That's wonderful to hear. Meg said, advice to keep it simple and start small. Indeed, yeah, such a great way to launch any new initiative. Jennifer said, thank you for the reminder of not overdoing the program. Corinne, I think that the things to avoid and guidelines to consider was really helpful. Awesome. So tons of great takeaways here. Jennifer, Maslow's hierarchy first. Claudine, what makes your team feel valued is a very important question. Awesome, team. So Mary, clearly the audience loved your ideas and thoughts for today, which is wonderful. And I'm sure you can see there's tons more little comments flowing in. So it's so cool to see that you got a good value from today's session as well. We're going to switch to Q&A now. But before we do that, I'm going to put on a different hat, and I'd love to invite you guys, if you're interested, to learn more about either bucket list or Tango cards. And then we're going to jump into SHRM credits and Q&A. So for those of you who are interested in rewards and recognition, Bucket List Rewards is the #1 ranked employee rewards and recognition program. We're great at helping companies lower turnover, recognize outstanding work, and breaking down silos. But I'm going to just pop up a quick poll question here. If you want to learn more about Bucket List, I'm just going to go ahead and click yes. I'd love to learn more about the organization. And the team, in addition to potentially providing you with a really cool custom demo, we're always happy to help share best practices and tips. So I'm going to let that run for just a few more seconds, and then we'll switch gears. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about Tango, I'd highly encourage you to click that yes button. So up on screen, it says, would you like to learn more about Tango Cards? Just an awesome, awesome company. And Mary is really representative of their super cool culture they have going on. So I'm going to let this run for a few more seconds. and then we're going to jump into Q&A. Cool. Looks like a lot of you have had a chance to answer that poll. I'm going to go ahead and end that.
And Jason, I see something in the chat. Would it be okay if I comment on something that I'm seeing? I saw a question around like ask your own teams what's meaningful for them too. I wholeheartedly agree, right? While HR and the people departments might be sponsors or the creators or designers of some of both those formal and informal programs, I also really feel strongly that we as leaders of other people have this really awesome responsibility to do our own reward and recognition programs as well. And it doesn't have to be this full-fledged full program. But I feel like it's not always the responsibility of the senior leadership team or the people HR departments to do that. So absolutely, I agree with that person that made that comment, that it's a really great practice as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Mary. What a great transition to questions. And I'll jump into the next one. And that question is, this is from Stephanie, thank you. Our biggest challenge is including our warehouse manufacturing staff that don't have company email, and some speak very little English. Any tips here?
Yeah,
Mary?
so I have been in that exact situation where we had one location that was our manufacturing employees, and we had a different location that was our corporate employees. Very similar. We didn't, our manufacturing employees did not have email addresses and did not have access to any computer other than clocking in and clocking out. And we did have some non-native English speakers. And so we did a few things. One, we replicated what we were doing at the corporate level, but we did it much more. And while I'm advocating for automation, right, I think there is some time to sort of go a little bit more manual. So we take sort of the same process, the same behaviors that we were recognizing, and we put it on paper forms. And we specifically gave time once a week for like 5 or 10 minutes, not during their break time, but we gave them time during their working shift to fill out these reward and recognition slips. And we also had interpreters that if you wanted to go to and be able to help either write it in English or help the HR team read it and be able to translate it, so that everyone, again, had the chance to participate.
Awesome. So a great first person experience and really good share. And one maybe bullet point I might add to that fantastic answer, something we've been observing is these days more and more companies are allowing employees to use a personal email address, which, because for example, everybody has access to Instagram and Facebook and they're used to these kind of social programs. So if you're interested, that's always an option as well. Cool. And next question from Nisha, thank you. How can we ascertain which reward program works for the organization? Should it be designed by the team or across the whole organization? So I think what Nisha is asking there is, do you want a small group to contribute to the program, or are you looking, or do you want participation from a wider group when it comes to the creation of your recognition program?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a very consultative answer, right? And say it depends. I think it depends on the size of your organization, sort of the phase of a company life cycle that you're in, and sort of what resources you have on hand. I think ideally it is great as if you can have cross-functional participation in the design, but I know that's not always possible given what's going on in the business. So I think you just, again, if you start small, you gather employee feedback, and you try to enlist that cross-functional support, those are the foundational pieces that at least get your program off of the ground. And then again, if you start small, you get some success, then you can add other reward and recognition elements. And it's those additional elements where then maybe you or your team owns that core element, but then other teams might own a different thing. An example might be my people department at Tango Card, right? We're really responsible for employee engagement and some of this reward and recognition. But the sales team just rolled out in the month of March this new sales thing, and they created a Slack channel for it. So they're owning this new recognition piece and sharing it with the whole company. And it's something my team doesn't have to monitor, but it's a really great way to get that organization involved.
Excellent. Awesome. And then a question from Matt. This is kind of a cool creative question. Matt said, "Thank you very much for the presentation and practical tips. What's some advice you have when it comes to recognition for partner companies and channel distributors?"
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna do a little plug for Tango Card. Tango Card has really great ways that uses automation, uses technology, and that has a really simple platform where you can reward and recognize those channel partners and other types of external vendors that are helping you out. And so I'm pretty sure that I could hook you up after this with one of our business development folks and walk you through on how we can do that, because it's a really easy, great way to be able to reward and recognize those other folks as well. And I'm so glad somebody pointed that out, because companies like Tango Card, that does help with things like new customer acquisition, ongoing partner strategies. So I think that's a great call out too. Thanks for mentioning that.
Awesome. And then I think we have our last question here. This one comes from Nancy. And I think this is really good. This is a great question. I've certainly heard this and experienced this. Nancy asks or says, "Hello, maybe this was answered during the webinar, but my biggest roadblock is a staff who scoff, roll their eyes, or otherwise refuse to participate in any kind of recognition. While I want to respect opinions, when those employees' actions create a negative atmosphere, and perhaps even influence others to come to their side and bring things down, that makes it even harder to roll out a program like this. Upper management may not always address this either, so I'd love to get tips on how to deal with the situation."
Yeah, and I feel for you, Nancy. I have also been in this situation when I was in a company that had never had a people department before, and I was their first internal hire. And if I may, I'll just go on a limb and say they told me when they hired me that they thought HR was the outhouse. And so I definitely know what this like. What I will say is find your champions first. I guarantee there are employees and even some leaders who are begging and craving for employee appreciation and want to help. So rather than trying to figure out how, if you sort of think of the curve, how you think about getting those people who will always lag behind and be the naysayers, focus on those early adopters and those at the other end of the curve that want to help champion. And if you get those folks to help champion for you, then it's not you all by yourself sitting in HR or the people department trying to get this. It's really those grassroots advocates that will help you give you the biggest lift.
Yeah, if I may expand upon that answer, the idea of champions is so powerful. I'll share a short story to start off with. I was at a kickoff with a client out at Pennsylvania, and as a part of the kickoff, we always encourage senior leaders to recognize staff for great work. And the CEO was actually recognizing one of the women on his team, and she got up and started crying. And at first, I was like, "What's this all about? What's going on here?" And what she said was really compelling. She said that, "I've been with the company for 8 years, and this is the first time somebody said thank you." And she was so moved that she was moved to tears in a really positive way. So exactly to Mary's point, like I guarantee you, there's people on your team that are desperate for this. Again, anchoring into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like on the second layer, the desire for psychological safety, to feel appreciated, to feel loved for what you do. This is foundational to human beings. It's not just the work-life culture. And then also, if you're looking for a way to capture this in a quantitative format, survey your team. We have a bunch of default templates we're more than happy to share. But you can just ask your team, do you feel recognized and appreciated? When you do that, I guarantee you there's a bunch of staff who've been overlooked, who feel frustrated. Lack of recognition is one of the number one reasons people leave an organization, and every CEO, every leadership team hates to lose an A player. So anyway, survey your team, see how you're currently doing with recognition. It'll give you the data and a quantitative information to really sell it through. And then lastly, it's not just a quantitative results of like X% feeling unappreciated. It's grabbing those little quotes, those little snippets of what people feeling, right? Because you want to communicate back to your leadership team and the entire organization that for those who don't feel recognized, that needs to be shared so it can be addressed. But just my 2 cents on that question there. Awesome. So we've been able to move through all the questions. One more just kind of cool piece of feedback for you, Mary. This is from Janice Hopkins. She said, great information. I'm creating my work plan and I'm using all the information shared today. So Mary, outstanding job. And just in the sake of recognition, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. And I think we can start moving to wrap things up. Before we say our adieus and goodbyes, Mary, any kind of final comments or feedback from your point of view?
Yeah, I again just want to do a shout out for the Maslow's hierarchy piece, and that as people in HR departments make sure that we have the pay. I see somebody talking about the pay. Make sure you have the pay and benefits right first, because no amount of reward and recognition is going to make up for not being competitive with that. And then secondly, just to remember to focus and add on that layer of DEI, because what's meaningful to somebody may not be meaningful to someone else.
Yeah, what a great way to wrap things up. So again, Mary, thank you so much for all the ideas and insights and expertise. And everybody, thanks for joining us here today. The whole session is recorded. We're going to be sharing that recording with everybody. We're also going to be sending out a slide deck. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Thursday.